Yeah, so let's just reflect everybody's here. Hello there, sir.
I want to make an appearance right here.
You did great.
Take this place.
That's my game, man.
You did great.
I'm staging there, buddy.
Item C is approval of the meeting minutes from the regular city council meeting of September 10th, 2018. I'll move those. Moved by Smith, thank you.
Oh, is that right?
Seconded by Knight, thank you both.
Do you live in the city limits?
Mr. Smith, do you have any comments? No, I don't.
Not in Webster.
Webster.
Ms. Knight,
Well, part of Webster is us too, so.
anyone else have any comments on the meeting minutes this evening? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. We have no prearranged participation. We're down to approval of the agenda. There's nothing on the table in front of us to add. Moved. Approve as presented. Moved by Smith, thank you.
Second.
Second by Michelle's, thank you. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Fantastic, thank you. So we're down to item F, which is a public hearing. And we have a public hearing this evening to consider a request from QED for an industrial facilities tax exemption. And for those of you in the audience, the way we do this is we'll open the public hearing and we'll take any comments on the exemption request or potentially maybe hear from the applicant, say a few words, say hello. And then once we close the public hearing, council will take action following the public hearing on that request rather than under the new business items down below. So, Ms. Jones, if we open the public hearing, can you tell me what time it is?
7:03.
All right, so we'll open the public hearing at 7:03 p.m. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak this evening about the request? Oh, somebody's got to say something.
Would you like the applicant?
I think it'd be wonderful if the applicant would say hello at least.
Can I say hello? Yeah.
This is Tim White.
Yes, I.
Hi, Tim.
Good evening. My name is Tim White. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all this evening. If I could, I'd like to just take 2 minutes and tell you a little bit about QED.
Be great.
So, QED Environmental Systems was founded originally in Ann Arbor over 35 years ago and moved to Dexter, to our location over on Bishop Circle in 2011. We make and design equipment for environmental applications worldwide. And some of that equipment are things like pumping systems for groundwater sampling, groundwater remediation equipment, gas analysis and control equipment. And typically our customers are municipalities, landfill operators, military facilities, oil and gas facilities, and then certainly a lot of environmental engineering firms that utilize our equipment. We have 160 employees globally, 70 of which are in the Dexter area. And we have, as you can imagine, a strong belief in a lot of opportunity in the environmental business. So we're making a lot of investments in the business right now to position ourselves for those opportunities and for growth. So we invest over 5% of our sales into new product development. So we have a number of engineers at our Dexter facility, so a lot of design engineers. In the last 3 years, we've purchased 4 companies that were North American companies, and we've folded them into our business here. And then a year ago, almost to the day, we purchased our facility in Dexter, and we've been making a lot of investments in it so we can be prepared for this additional growth and other opportunities for buying equipment, making facility updates, so on and so forth. And so that brings us to why we're here today and asking for your continued support and help us grow and consider this tax abatement request.
Great, thank you very much, Tim, for the introduction and for coming this evening.
May I ask something?
Mr. Tell, you may.
I'm noticing on your application on page, well, it's 10 of 12 of ours. Number 9, it says number of existing jobs at this facility will retain to 20. Did you say you have 70 employees or 20?
We have 70 employees in Dexter.
So this will allow 20 existing jobs to continue in addition to 6 new ones?
For additional positions.
20 additional or just 6 additional?
I remember exactly how many additional was.
So, yeah, I was just explaining to Michelle, so, I'll step up just so you can hear me. We were just chatting about the 20, so we had, excuse me, a facility out in California that we had consolidated when we bought this entire building. We were able to retain those 20 here instead of them going and staying in California.
Okay.
So those 20 stay in this facility, and with the expansion, we'll be able to add another 6 estimated positions, potentially more just with the machining and some of the other things that we've brought on site and in-house.
So there are currently 70 there or 90?
70,
70, and so this one we're going up to 76, okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm done, unless there's other questions.
Are there other members of the public present that would like to speak during the public hearing?
How long does the tax exemption go for? Is it year to year, or is it?
It's, it will be a 3-year tax exemption. It says 4 in the packet, but there was a
Calculation error.
calculation error on page whatever, but it'll be a 3-year tax exemption. It's half. 50% exemption.
How many employees live in Dexter?
That's a good question. We have,
So wait, let's get your name.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For the record, name
Yeah, my
and
name
address.
is Dan Alabre. I apologize. If I make a mistake on first meeting.
No, no problem.
Come on up
Welcome.
and
You're
give
welcome.
your
We're happy to
address,
have you.
please.
What's that?
Your address, please.
4553 Lake Vista Drive.
Great. Great. Yeah, any question you have, you're allowed to
Just kind
make.
of the number of employees that live in Dexter versus Ann Arbor or another city. Our services will be given to you for free, I guess, you know. Police and
I guess to clarify, when we say Dexter, we don't necessarily mean the city itself. We're
township.
going to include the
certainly.
school district, which is pretty big.
Right.
But if you could identify either that many or even in the city, would be very helpful.
Yeah, there's roughly 6 to 8 employees that live actually in Dexter. The rest are in Chelsea and just the surrounding communities.
Thank you.
Michelle, anything to add?
No, other than, excuse me, the investment that they are making or have made in the real property is just shy of $500,000. On the application, they did show personal property tax, but since state law has changed and they no longer pay the personal property, that doesn't get included in the application. And like Sean said, there was a minor calculation error regarding the job. So the eligibility, the number of years eligible for the abatement is 3, not 4. With a 50% abatement, that's only on the additional value created by the investment in the real property. It's not their entire property. The amount is, the city will still collect $1,775. Excuse me. The other taxing jurisdictions will capture $6,834. Had the investment not been made, we'd be collecting no additional revenue. So 50% of the increase in value is better than no increase in value. It also, the investment, they do retain the jobs that would have, as Renee said, gone to California. They're here now, and they're increasing with additional 6 new employees. So at the end of the abatement, the city's revenue will double to the 3,500 plus, and the other taxing jurisdictions will be over 13,000. If you've got any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing then, officially at
7:10.
7:10. Thank you, Ms. Jones. And then, okay,
I'd like to approve the request for a 3-year period of time.
okay, so the resolution on page 8, if you will, with the change
Yep.
of 3 years instead of 4 under number 3. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay.
No, it's just a one line. Is that correct?
You did fine, yep.
Okay, it's a
I'm
one-liner.
just pointing everybody to the resolution that's on
Okay,
page 8
all
in the
right.
packet that will.
I guess I didn't say QED, but,
That's okay, I knew what you meant.
all right.
Okay, questions? Zach?
I'm looking at the building permit on page 14, which shows, and this can be for staff or the applicant or whoever might have more information, that lists the estimated cost of construction at $100,000 US dollars. We are being told that the improvements were for $496,000. I understand that there's some wiggle in construction estimating, but that is significant increase over what the building permit was. And I'm wondering where that $396 extra $1,000 came from.
I can tell you that they did submit invoices that, on page 12, it identifies, they call it the leasehold improvements, but they were the improvements that started out.
So was the building permit lowballed to reduce the cost of the building permit?
That would be a question I would have to ask Winston O'Brien.
And the value is really determined by the assessor once the value is set. It doesn't, I mean, whatever we value it at here is an estimate until the assessor actually assesses it to a certain amount. So it can't be any more than what the assessor assesses all of the improvements to be. They're just estimates.
I can make sure in the future that if that's a question you want answered, we'll ask it.
And I can speak to that more specifically, Michelle. So I'm Renee Moore, by the way. I work with QBD also. I didn't introduce myself early on there. So I could just shed some light on that. So this has been a long process with the building in terms of the expansion, as you can imagine. And one of the things that came up as we brought the machining on site is the building itself needs to support the machining and some of the other things that we're doing in order to bring the jobs on and maintain production. So with that, you need an air compressor and some of these other things that then needed full electrical throughout the building, as well as and an upgrade to that, as well as like an alarm system. Our building wasn't fully alarmed on the one side; it had no alarm system to speak of. So some of those things that I don't think would have been reflected necessarily in the building permit. And to Michelle's point, I'm not sure where Vance O'Brien came up with that initial estimate, but all of these things were planned as we built them out and not all done by Vance O'Brien, so.
All right.
And I made a note to make sure that those are questions that they'd ask in the future, Zach.
Mr. Cousins?
Well, I appreciate the company and what they do, but as if I was, well, even now, as a council member and as a citizen, I wouldn't have a clue what they did from the stuff in the packet here. There's nothing that describes what the gentleman talked about at all. And I think that we should, as a council, and certainly citizens that would see this packet and may want to make a comment about it, should know what the people do.
Well, it is on page 10. I mean, they have to describe at least, that they're a leading supplier of environmental remediation
Yeah, I know that, but
projects.
maybe that's enough for some, but I didn't think it was quite enough, but it's something, okay? I just didn't get it. What is environmental remediation, okay? Well, he described what that was. He talked about how they dealt with it. So I thought, the other thing is that we know where the industrial park is. Today, I can't even tell you where this building is. I would hope that we would have a map in the future of everything that we ever talking about, okay? And that's not necessarily criticism of this year, but a lot of times we throw out numbers, or we put a number in, it's 8140, or it's 31 whatever, and people don't know what those are. It would be nice to have that, okay? And that process there. The last comment I would make is that there is certainly an effect on us as a city, as a municipality, and that we have a reduction in the amount of money taxes that we would get. But we make that decision. And we bear the process as we go through that. But as described on page 7, it also affects at least 5 different other municipalities, or other interest groups. And that's the Washtenaw County, it's the schools, it's the library, it's the community college, and it's the intermediate school district. And they all get less money for a period of time. And they will get it eventually. but they don't get it now.
Okay.
And I think that we should really realize that that's one of the facts we have, because as a husband of a member of the Dexter Library, I hear that quite often, that they do get...
They're impacted by the decision.
They're impacted by any decision that we make on this, okay?
So one of the requirements in state law when it comes to the tax abatements, and I can make sure that I address this better in the future, is that all jurisdictions, taxing jurisdictions, have to be notified in advance of the public hearing.
They are.
Excuse me, and they are.
But it makes really no damn bit of difference what happens. I'll tell you that.
And they've never
Not
come to
necessarily.
protest it. I mean, if they all showed up and said, don't do it, they have the right to do that.
They do. They don't.
But if this industrial tax exemption hadn't gone through, they wouldn't be getting anything anyway.
If
Not if-
if the investments haven't been made,
That's
right,
correct.
it wouldn't.
If this company decided not to make an investment,
Yeah, this is an investment tool.
Correct.
Right.
It is an investment tool.
and I understand that. I mean, I've been doing this for years, okay, right? You have.
Yes, I know, Mr. Corcoran.
Okay. But I also know that it affects other units of governments, including the school system.
Absolutely, and I've understood that statement from 20 years we've been having that discussion. And I don't disagree at all. Can you explain to me on this worksheet where the error was
Yes.
from
if
4 to
you-
3?
If you go to page 16, I believe it is,
We're on 16, all right.
16 at the top, it says jobs retained 20,
Okay.
5.5 equals 25.
Oh, that's the wrong
It's-
line.
Yeah, it's the wrong number. So
Okay.
when it's calculated correctly,
It's
it
10,
reduces it down,
13.
and then that affects the number of years of eligibility.
All right, that's all, I'm sorry, I didn't, should have seen that.
I should have too.
No problem.
No more for me, thank you.
You're welcome, no problem. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion to approve the request from QED for an industrial facilities tax exemption for 3 years. Motion made by Donna, second by Mr. Tell. Last questions? Ms. Jones, please call the vote.
Tell,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Thank you very much for investing in our community, and thank you for your patience this evening. You're welcome at any meeting from here on out. Come on back.
Thank you so much.
Nice meeting both of you.
Thanks for showing.
We are down to non-arranged participation. This is a spot on the agenda for anybody in the audience to speak to us about any topic. All we ask is that you state your name and address and step up to the podium. Is there anybody that would like to speak this evening? Okay, we'll keep moving. There were 2 communications in the packet, our upcoming meeting list and the signed calendar. Council, do you have any questions on either of those or comments? Staff, any updates to provide? Okay. We are down to our first report this evening from our County Sheriff Representative, Sergeant Fox. How are you? Good. Welcome.
Good evening, all. I just wanted to do a real quick sort of a summary of the summer. Not much to talk about, which is always a good thing.
Good.
We did have, within the Dexter community, and not just isolated to Dexter City, between 20 and 22 events that we either directly or indirectly staffed or participated in. That could range from the bike races to fireworks to Dexter Days. I mean, there's, you know how Dexter is during the summer. Everybody wants to do something at Dexter. No issues. I mean, other than traffic, which is related to a lot of the construction. No issues, no arrests, no crime sprees, no one getting hurt, nothing. Everything went off pretty flawlessly. Other than
Wonderful.
one person at the beer tent that was had a little too much fun.
Only one?
Wasn't the mayor, I saw him there. It wasn't him at all, I know that.
We took him out the back.
Yes. Super secret doorway.
So that went real good. Obviously, as you know, you can see through some of the reports, or it's sort of every month our staffing is down. You know, the department's trying to address it. Another positive thing with all the events and the ones that we did participate directly in is that even with the staffing issues we had, we were able to fulfill our, you know, obligations on the people that wanted to contract with us. whether it be safety for the bike races or fireworks or whatever it is, we were able to at least fulfill that, which is good for our department. People reach out to us, they want us to be involved, so it's good that we're able to fulfill that. Crime-wise, I pulled the numbers from this summer versus last summer. That's the best apples to apples we can get when we try to compare exact months. In our major crime categories, crime is down 44%. That goes from assaults to burglary, damaged property, all the larcenies, vehicle thefts, so on and so forth. I don't need to go one by one, but as a sum, down 44%. Vehicle accidents down 52%. Now, I don't know if part of that is because everybody drove through the city at a snail's pace because of all the traffic or because of the construction. But regardless, when you do have that kind of congestion is where you're funneling people into one area, whether it be Baker Road when Dexter and Arbor was getting worked on or vice versa. People can sometimes tend to get pissed off and then you do get a lot of accidents, but fairly well. The construction process at the roundabouts, we dealt with some people moving barricades and things like that, but I mean, that's not the end of the world. Wrote numerous citations and things that we expected. We looked at it, we dealt with it and moved on, but nothing major. Since the roundabouts have been open, we hear complaints about people not yielding and not doing the right thing. Whenever we're down there, everything seems to run smoothly. Now, whether that's because we're sitting right there and people are paying a little closer attention, because it does tend to happen, or people are blowing things a little bit out of proportion, I don't know. I do know that when the roundabouts were opened up that very first night for the football game, that things went really smooth that night. From our perspective, I like how they redid Creekside and that traffic flow, especially with the buses and the parents. That should help with the traffic congestion there. So that's not much to talk about, but that's a good thing. So, any questions? Sure.
Mr. Tell?
Has the county sheriff engaged in any cross-training with like the schools about hostage situations where, you read about it and then they train bus drivers and the school teachers and do an active?
So what they do, the county sheriff's department uses a philosophy, it's called ALICE. And I can't tell you what the acronym is, but it's based on active shooter training. So they do it with all the schools. They've done it with local businesses. I know a few weeks ago they were out doing it at one of the dentist places. I think the new one there on Dan Hoy, Dexter Dentistry, or I'm not. So they can do it for private sector too. So yes, for years we've been working with them, teaching it. We have instructors that teach it. Actually, we had a few people just went to the instructor course so we could have more instructors.
Do you collaborate with the local fire departments and?
Not as of now. For that training?
Yes.
No, not as of now. Chief and I have talked about that, but that's...
Thought that might be something to put under that same umbrella, not being...
That one's above my pay grade.
Not mine. Number 2, anything you mentioned of the roundabouts, has there been any accidents at the roundabout?
The last time I checked, we have not had one yet.
Not one accident.
Directly affiliated with the roundabouts, no.
I work uptown and there was an incident with somebody who said he couldn't get down Dexter Pickney Road about a week and a half ago. Can you elaborate on it? I've been looking for why the Dexter Pickney was closed off of Territorial and up to the lakes.
There was I wouldn't call it a photo shoot. We had a contract with a filming company.
Okay, so it wasn't an incident as much as...
No, and I'm spit by, that's what I assumed. It was that night. It was
that evening.
That evening. I think we did it from like 7 p.m. to like 1:30 in the morning.
Okay.
And
he was just unaware. We didn't know there was an incident. He
No.
didn't have the Nixle application or anything.
No, there was nothing. And I wasn't there, but it was only supposed to be shut down for a period of 1 or 2 minutes at a time. It wasn't a full shutdown.
Well, you know how filming is.
I know.
And my 4th comment is a comment. I do work at the Hackney Hardware uptown.
Mhm.
A lot of times I'll take my lunch sitting at the bakery and watch the intersection. I cannot tell you how many people I see run that light and almost hit pedestrians coming across the street. And then they honk because the pedestrian has the right of way.
Right there, bro.
Right there in front of Bishop's old build, what's the name of that place?
Artistica.
Yeah, Artistica. It's not as bad turning off of Broad, but man, they don't want to stop for that light. And I thought maybe it was just Hodads or Cowboys or something, but I've seen little old ladies running it just as much, so. I don't know if there's something we can do about there. And I'll bring up something Joe Semaphero brought up, is the right turn at Baker, where they don't allow the people to turn left coming the other way, because they make that assumption. And I made the argument with Joe, well, those people should be aware, but obviously they don't care.
Yeah, well, we have money in the budget to upgrade those signals to do it differently, so.
I don't know if we need to upgrade the signal or just put a sign here, left traffic has right of way. Stupid.
You gotta
Read the law. That's all I have. Thank you.
Other questions for Sergeant Fox? We like good reports like this. Thank you for coming and giving us one. Mr. Cousins?
I'm gonna comment out Sergeant Fox, he can't even hear what I'm saying, okay, so he'll have to just shut this out. Washington Convention and Visitors Bureau, I'm on that board, and we had a discussion last Friday in our meeting that in Ann Arbor, they are getting very serious about the city of Ann Arbor, that any events that they have there now, they want to charge the group that has the event, charge it off. For instance, football games.
They don't charge for football?
Wow. A lot of things that are downtown, when they shut them off, when they shut the whole streets down, they bring in great big barriers because of the protection there. They don't want cars going back and forth all the time. And so we got entered into discussions because some of us were out county, you know, that it would be almost impossible to do that in Dexter unless you shut down Main Street and Broad and half of the city. If you did that for the barriers, you know, for people not to be able to do that. So most of it was the idea that they are bringing in these large things that you see on the freeways by cranes and setting them up there to block off the streets. And they're looking at other things like bollards where they could put them in and then take them out. That would be in the ground 4 feet and then smaller put together. So there's a lot of different things going on, but it's an issue that they feel that their costs are driven up dramatically by these events all the time. And you said we have like 20 to 22 events. We thank you and the sheriff for all that effort, as well as individually the efforts there, because I've seen it happen. But it's something that we ought to be aware of in the future that could come down, that could cost.
It kind of depends on the event, because I mean, I think sometimes people do pay for certain events, and then some events are just sort of things you guys, you know, like some of the parades and stuff you don't necessarily charge for, but some events, I would think like Dexter and Arbor Run maybe, or some things you guys do charge for if they do get a contract.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So, not every single event is free.
No.
Like the security you provided, the Dexter Days tent is typically charged back, you know, that kind of stuff.
It wasn't just the individual cost, it's the other stuff that has to be brought in to make protection feel that it's safe there.
Right, because people started driving through barricades and people have had tragedies, so I think a lot of communities did sort of make fancier barricades, you know, have fancier barricades.
Just wanted to let you know aware. It's a discussion in the county right now.
It's interesting how common the active shooter training is getting, because I volunteered at the Detroit Symphony and we went through sort of they just hired an ATF agent, a former ATF agent as their head of security, I mean, for something like the Symphony, because, you know, it's just, everyone has to be aware of that now.
Anywhere you got a crowd.
Right.
Very good.
When you talk about, Paul, you talk about these barricades, you're talking about the expense that the community has to provide the barricade, and also like DPW staffing to move them around, and
Yes.
so that would all go on the charging back.
City of Ann Arbor brings these barricades in and with big cranes. Whether it's smart to do that on our roads or not was another discussion, okay? Whether they can maybe reduce that.
But that's what
impact.
it's the actual thing and the staff timing.
It's
Yeah.
the-
Okay.
it's
And
events.
police. Yeah, okay.
Correct, all the above.
I mean, we had that conversation, what was that now, 2 years ago, about increasing the permit fee to
We
cover
did.
some of that stuff, and, you know, we
Did go over
chose
well.
not to at the time, but, I mean, a lot of communities started that 10,
Many years ago.
15 years ago, yeah. So,
Well, when the money ran out, everybody was looking for
Right.
revenue streams.
yeah, it was probably back in '02, I think, Gilmore started doing that more.
We'll have to start charging you to come to meetings.
There you go.
Are there any other comments for Sergeant Fox? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time this evening.
Yep.
Next up is our report from our Public Services Superintendent. Welcome, Dan.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
I have a 2-week report, and I have an update on the wastewater treatment plant, Dan Hoy Road, and also Grandview Commons. So if you want to start with any questions on my report?
In the first section of the DPW there, it said took barrels to the library. What barrels?
To be honest with you, I can't tell you.
That's 2 weeks ago.
I was off a few days.
Did they have an event there?
I don't remember, to be honest.
Did they have some kind of thing where they had kids in and they had trucks or something?
I'm sure it
They
was,
did
it had to
that.
have been something traffic, maybe they had to block, they might have did like pavement markings and they needed to block it off overnight or
Oh.
something. You know what, they might have sealed it, maybe, or something, but it was
I do
probably, traffic control barricades.
Sorry about that. I
Just
can
curious.
I can follow up with you.
Good one.
Is it as tough as the first one?
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
I mean,
good.
seriously, there's a lot going on.
What was the outcome of the, by catching the boring company stealing water from our fire hydrant? Did we find them? Did
So
we-
yeah, that was in my report, that we sent them a fine that has to be paid by October 1st, and if they pay that, then we won't pursue the the charges, the misdemeanors, and
Were
the...
they taken aback? Were they aghast?
Yeah, I think they were fairly surprised that it was an issue, the people with the hydrant.
Yeah, they couldn't supply enough water from wherever they were coming from out to Horseshoe Bend where they were working. Luckily, we had a resident over at Westridge that noticed that made a couple phone calls. And he notified me when he was out there. I told him I actually had to catch him doing it.
They were filling up a tanker?
A 400 gallon.
And then moving on.
The problem is they don't have any backflow prevention device on there. They had the hose down inside the tank.
Yeah.
Right.
So the
Well, not to mention they didn't ask.
Well, right, I mean, that's one thing, but if something got back in our system because they didn't follow the rules of our
Backflow,
ordinance,
that's right.
that's, you know, it's $10 of
They come in
water.
with their own hose then and just hook up?
Yeah, they hooked up, they had their own hydrant wrench, and they just dumped a 2.5-inch hose in their tank. So we went out there when the resident called, and I called 911, the police came out, and,
But they didn't seem to think they were doing anything wrong.
yeah,
Hydrant.
they didn't, but I know that they knew.
They knew.
Yes, they did.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they know what they're doing, so.
Hilarious.
Tried to explain to them that we do provide that service down at the wastewater treatment plant or the Department of Public Works, but we have a backflow preventer, we have a meter, I mean, there's a
Yeah, all the
process
stuff.
you need to go through.
Which they did, actually.
Yeah, they actually
Finished their
came down and
job.
purchased some water from us after
Good.
doing it the right way. And then he asked me if that's the way to do it in every community, and I said, I
Don't know about every community.
It doesn't matter.
But it is here.
And
Probably, though. like,
We're trying to work with them to give them a place so we don't have to do this.
This guy should ask them if they were doing that in the other communities, getting their water at the.
We got a new Citizen of the Year award.
Right.
And then you found a manhole full of gravel on Dan Hoy?
Yeah, when they went through originally and they put the new base down on Dan Hoy Road, we have them put steel plates over the manholes and then they
Right.
put their base down, and then we have them come in and they cut that out.
They forgot?
And the plate wasn't put on properly.
Oh.
And what happened was we went up there for a missed dig request, and our water guy that was doing the missed dig request noticed that the sewer manhole that he opened to make sure which way the sewer was going to market, it was backing up in the manhole. So we went up the line a little, and then we figured out it was covered by the plate, which in turn, when they dug all that new asphalt off Blaze did, we found probably a yard of dirt in that manhole that had slipped by the plate. They didn't put it on all the way, put the gravel over, and it fell inside. And they're gonna cover all that cost. Luckily, we had the saw grant stuff going on, we had the TV, you know, we had the vacuum truck and
Yeah, couldn't
everything.
have been better.
Bless you. Thank you. Other questions for Dan on the written report?
Did you ever figure out what the temperature sensor,
We have not been able to
When
figure
was
that
it?
out, right? It happened late, we weren't at the plant when it did happen. We're really not sure what happened.
so it could be the sensor, it could be.
It could be the
anything.
sensor, we're getting that calibrated actually, to make sure that that's not malfunctioning.
Yeah, that's a.
But we did have a
spot
hiccup in the
that.
plant, so, not bad, but,
Then we had a power failure at the lift station also, good grief.
yeah.
But we don't have any PFAs? Is that what they are?
Not in their drinking water, there was detected in their wastewater, but right now, it's currently under the 70 parts per trillion.
We found it in our wastewater?
Yes.
Who's that from?
Yeah.
Well, we sampled, you know, a few businesses. The one that stood out the most was Alpha Metal, but they're still below what the standards are right now at 70 parts per trillion. We did go to all of the businesses we sampled. We talked to them about what the results were. And we told them that we're not sure where the 70 parts per trillion is going to land in a year or two or so. They're still working through that, the EPA and the state.
I have a question.
Okay, please.
Compliments to Andrea. We had all that craziness about the water sample and whatever. She called me, just so apologizing. I said, it's not your fault, it's mine. But, and it's nice when they contact and
Right.
are pleasant, so pass that along, please.
Okay, thank you.
And I think she took it after, I didn't see it today, so
Okay.
it must be gone.
That's good.
Yeah.
No more from me, thank you.
Additional updates, please?
We had a meeting down at the wastewater treatment plant at 7:30 this morning. They're doing some demolition down there on the FEW system and also a little bit on the grit chamber at the head of the plant. We had to send a letter that Courtney had to send back to the DEQ asking for October 1st to be the day that we're going to bypass the tertiary filter so we can really get started on the demolition down there. But we got some little things that they can do now without us having to bypass anything. So they've been working on that today and they're going to continue through the week. And we're hoping October 1st is when the real demolition is going to start after we get approval from the DEQ. Dan Hoy Road, it was supposed to be repaved Saturday. We had a meeting, I want to say a week and a half ago with the school, Granger, Blaze Construction, T&M Asphalt, OHM, and myself, and they came up with a plan on how to fix those areas that had the big cracks in them, in the roads. So we came up with a plan, and they decided, and also G2 was there, their testing company. They decided this week to change the plan on how they're going to do the fixes on the road. What we agreed to is they were going to go in and remove the asphalt, they were going to remove the base, the gravel, and then they were going to proof roll it and then see what it looked like, whether it needed the fabric down or not. They decided not to remove the base and just put the roller over it. OHM was out there, they did see some deflection, that means the base was going up and down. So they didn't do what they said they were going to do. So what we asked them is to leave the road open for a week after they put the new asphalt in the patches and let it go for a week, and then we look at it, evaluate it after a week, possibly 2 weeks, to see if the cracking was going to occur again.
So they didn't excavate below it?
No. A couple of them they did, but not all of them, like we agreed to at the beginning. And I wasn't aware of that until a day into the process, and then finally Chris called me down there when they had another meeting with everybody. And the only ones that remember what was going on in that meeting was Chris from OHM, myself, and the asphalt guy. The asphalt company's like, I'm not gonna take responsibility for patching this and having it crack again when you guys, we agreed how we were gonna do this process and you guys changed it. And as far as I'm concerned, the reason it was changed was because of G2. That's who their testing company is, the one that told them what to do up there. So I pulled Fred from Granger aside, away from everybody else, and I told him that I know this is your project, but this is the city of Dexter's roads. So we need to find some medium ground here if you guys aren't gonna do what you said you were gonna do, and we need to leave this road open with the new patches for a minimum of a week, maybe 2 weeks. We'll decide after that, after this week, so.
Is there still heavy trucks going on those areas that were patched?
Yeah.
That's all you need to see.
I stopped up there this morning. It didn't take a week after they put that base down and
Start
everything was tore up,
Of
so.
course it is.
They don't have the heavy truck, Sean, that you're referring to with hauling the dirt because they're going through the roundabouts now, but there's still big trucks coming down Dexter and Arbor. So I'm hoping Wednesday, I went up there this morning, talked to Fred. I didn't walk it thoroughly like I would at 8 o'clock at night or 7:30 when there's not a lot of traffic. Before, when the cracks are there, you could stand there and watch the trucks and watch it deflect, you know, when we were having the other problem. But Granger is going by what G2 is telling them what to do, the testing company.
And OHM is agreeing, or?
They're not agreeing at all at the process. We had a plan, and they diverted from that plan, but what Chris was there with me, and he said, why don't we leave it a week, maybe 2 weeks, and we'll see what it looks like. Because it didn't take a week the last time.
You know,
Well, don't hesitate to put them on written notice if you need to.
Okay.
that's baloney. Don't agree to something with me and change your mind.
Right. I agree. Greenview, I talked to Steve. They're looking at the first week of October to finish asphalt on Grand Street. They're hoping to get all their concrete done on the inside and do some asphalt on the inside also. One more thing with the wastewater project, and I spoke to Chris with Wave today. We moved the diesel and the gas down to the DPW for temporary, not only for the Wave bus so they can still get their fuel, but also to keep the DPW, the big trucks, and as much stuff as we can out of the wastewater treatment plant. I talked to Chris at Wave today. We're going to, we still got to wait for approval through the county. They got to come down and approve the underground electrical and the temporary tanks. So we're hoping October 1st, they're going to start using the Department of Public Works to get their gasoline for the Wave vehicles. So they're not down at the wastewater treatment plant during construction.
I have a meeting tomorrow morning, I'll learn nothing. Thank you.
Yep. And that's it, unless you guys have any other questions or I missed something?
No, I think that's good.
I
Julie?
have a quick question, Dan, on the Grandview paving. At one point in time, you said there were some issues with the curbing and that. Did that all get resolved?
Yes, it did.
Okay,
Took 3 times and I think we got it.
thank you.
OHM has approved it.
Thank you for your good report.
Thank you.
Next up is our Community Development Manager. Michelle, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Sean? How's the rest of council doing?
Good?
Excellent. Okay, you have my report in front of you. Do you have any questions on it before I go into updates?
Okay, 150 Jeffords, are they gonna apply for variance?
So the question I've got is, I should have added one other thing, and that is, if you don't have any objections, one of the things we can also do is, I can take to Planning Commission a discussion for a potential text amendment to deal with situations like this where the signage would be greater than what's currently allowed. Having the signage on the screening around the barricade isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that we hadn't thought of previously because we haven't had a site develop in this way. So I think it's worth the discussion, but I wanted to know what you all thought. Natalie's also here if you've got any questions or want to talk to her about something. So I haven't heard anything negative from it.
Is it on both sides of the screen?
No, it's only on one side, the side that faces up.
So why don't they just turn it around?
You can see through it.
They could. I didn't realize when I wrote the memo that it was only on one side.
Oh, okay. Zach?
I would opine that I don't find it terribly offensive. if it were brighter colors, it might be an issue, but it's kind of mellow. It's a nice way of screening it. I guess my concern would be if we did a one-off amendment of the zoning ordinance just for this. So it seems, I'd rather bundle it with an annual review and update and stuff instead of everything comes along and changing it all the time.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So put this together with something else that we're going to look at on an annual basis.
Yep.
So in the meantime, though, we'd have to follow the ordinance. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just putting my opinions out
Okay.
there.
All right.
Well,
I thought, I didn't even think about it as a sign, obviously it is. Why I didn't think about it, I thought it was at least descriptive enough that people that were driving by there knew what was going on there, so I didn't have a problem with it. But I do see that as a sign now, but it's not offensive to me, either the colors or that it's there. They turn around and you can see through it anyway, it's not going to make a big difference, just on the other side. So.
And you said there's been no complaints on it.
No, there haven't been any calls or anything.
Just from
The
me.
only, yeah, Mr. Tell did come into the office and one day and asked about it.
You guys have decided.
The only issue that we had with it was, and I think Courtney already discussed it, or discussed it with Dan, the windstorm blew it down, but we were able to get in touch with Gunther, and they were able to fix it. It took 2 separate times, but there are holes cut into it now, if I'm not mistaken, to let the air come through. I know there's a technical term for that, I just...
Wind flaps,
Yes, thank you, wind flaps. Better than just plain old holes.
lines and all, lines and all.
Okay. All right, without any other questions, excuse me, master plan update, the public presentation of what's been happening so far. It's looking like October 29th from 7 to 9. That's the 5th Monday. I've received back from all but, I believe, 2 members of Planning Commission that date will work. So council's attendance, this wouldn't be a joint meeting, but you are more than welcome to attend so that you get a flavor of what public input happens. Mr. Smith?
Because the library's going to want you out of there before 9 o'clock, do we need to go or start it a little bit earlier? Or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No. The 7 to 9 has baked in both setup and takedown.
Okay.
I just put it in as that so that Planning Commission would keep that much time. But that's a good reminder. Okay.
so on number 2, are they applying for a variance then? Or what do we do?
Being that there hasn't been any real comment or question about it, I would like to take it to the Planning Commission, and if they're amenable to talking about an amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow this type of signage, we would go ahead and look at that. Otherwise, they would, if it's going to take a long period of time, if it's going to take too long, they would have to apply for a variance to keep it
Well, I
up.
don't know, I mean, the 2 things that are in your memo are not what you just suggested.
Right, I'm sorry, to make it clear. I mentioned that I should have added, if there were no objections, the third option is to go to the Planning Commission.
I don't think we should just let them be in violation of the ordinance.
Well, and I agree with you, and normally that's how we do it, except that remember when we did, when we were looking at both the outdoor seating for Aubrey's as well as for the pub, we allowed them to have their seating as they were going through their request for amendments. And this
Which was like what, a 2-week process?
No.
Months because of the public hearings.
Months.
And you have to have a public hearing on that to adjust their special land uses.
Well, it's a question whether we should have done that.
Well, remember, that was a discussion that we had, and there was no objection to allowing, as long as we were working with people, and they were working with us. If council wants to, that to change, I have no problem with it, just let me know, and I'll stick right to the black and white.
Well, I think they should apply for a variance immediately. I mean, how long does it take to do a text amendment for one thing? I mean, it seems, I agree with Zach, that's reactionary. I mean, at a minimum, they should turn it around.
Okay. If they turn it around, then if...
I asked, my first question was, is it two-sided? If it's two-sided, I mean...
Right, when I look at it from above, I see a white background, I don't see the signage. When I'm on street level looking at the face, I can see the signage, so. We can have them turn it around until have the discussion with the planning commission. They can apply for the variance, or they can take it down and put something else on.
Is there only certain parts of it that are an issue?
Because it's got commercial...
The building itself shouldn't be, a picture of the building shouldn't be objectionable.
No, but and all of the rest of it is commercial message, and the square footage of that is greater than what is currently allowed. Our ordinance hasn't ever considered that much signage. It's been usually the type of signage that you see on Mr. Brower's property or other developments where the sign goes in the ground, it's about 10 feet tall, and the panel is 32 square feet. If it's perpendicular to the street front, then it's 32 square feet on either side.
So the commercial message is too much to just cover that.
Right, because temporary commercial construction signage, commercial signage like that is allowed on a fence or a barricade or a wall of a building. It just can't be more than 32 square feet. It's the 32 square feet that's the issue here, and it does have more than 32 square feet.
Done.
Yeah, I'd like to be cooperative, but I also don't think that it's good practice to just turn your back. So if applying for variance, at least they're working on it. We're not turning our back, and yet their signage is up, and it seems until we can figure out how to get that resolved, I do think that do something to be working at it, because I don't think we can just turn it back.
Well, I mean, the developers represented here, I mean, your memo, Michelle, says that you've reached out and given them the option of removing or replacing it or applying for a variance. What did they choose?
We were waiting to see what the discussion germinated tonight. And it sounds as though it's going to be apply for a variance and possibly turn that sign around until this is all settled out.
Right. I mean, the issue came up because screening really has never been addressed in downtown Dexter. It's the first time there's been a screen around a building site. So, nobody thought of it when you guys requested the screening. And typically you'll see what's going on the site is usually on the screening to show. So we didn't think to even ask if there was something we needed to abide by. And when they asked us to do the screening, they didn't say it needs to be A, B, and C. So it just came up. So here we are, seeing how we can resolve it. One of the reasons for a text amendment, because if there's going to be other buildings done and more screening, it would be a good idea to have it in the ordinance. Screening for construction fencing can be A, B, and C. Because that will be the one and only.
I get that. It just doesn't say that today.
No, I don't want one project to define the ordinance.
Right. I agree with that.
And precedent.
No, I mean, it's really not addressed in the ordinance, construction screening.
Well, I can slice it a million ways.
Right.
Signs are signs.
Right. There's nothing wrong with the screen being up there. It's the fact that it's got commercial message, and so then it becomes a sign under our ordinance.
And as I am scrolling through our sign regulations, Article 7, it looks like much of it was written pre-Gilbert.
Michelle?
I'm sorry.
Mill Creek. Mill Creek.
They're saying
School board meeting?
School board meeting?
Mill Creek.
Mill Creek?
That's what the gentleman was here.
Okay, thank you.
As I'm scrolling through Article 7, it appears that most of the language of our sign regulations are pre-Gilbert and are not content neutral as they're supposed to be. So perhaps the charge of the Planning Commission is a deeper dive on that whole thing.
The topic of the Gilbert case and amendments to our sign code has been discussed, even with our attorney, and he has instructed that that is something that should happen. The decision's been made that we need to wait until our master plan is done and do it at that time.
Okay, so you're gonna work through something.
Yes, and I'll come back with an update for you at the next meeting.
All right.
Does the variance go to ZBA?
Excuse me?
Will the variance go to ZBA?
Yes, sir. The request for it will go to the ZBA, yes. Okay, following up on 2865 Baker Road, as you know, the hearing was scheduled for today. Excuse me. I went to the hearing, spoke with our attorney as well as the bank's attorney, explained, they asked for a 45-day extension to finish getting all their permits in order. Excuse me. Before the hearing last week, before I went to the planning conference, Tom Stringer had contacted me because they were asking to adjourn the meeting. And my comment back was that we were not willing to adjourn or postpone without any type of evidence that the applicant or the property owner was working toward resolving the private well and septic system issue. The attorney brought up the fact that we haven't cited them for that. Explained that he was correct, we hadn't.
Easy enough.
But we were responding to their scope of work, which showed that they were doing extensive repairs on the inside, which we had not cited previously. And we were trying to help them understand that if that's where they were going, don't forget you need to do these things too. It took a little bit of explaining both on my side and our attorney's side, and he finally understood that. So he asked for 45 days. I said I was comfortable with 30 days. I thought that was more than enough to get this process moving. It came down to scheduling. Our attorney wasn't available for the date that the court set, so they've come up with the date of November 5th, 2 o'clock. They will have to provide tangible evidence that they've either sought demolition permits or they've sought the preliminary zoning compliant permits in conjunction with private water, private well and septic system, and make their application to the city to request the variance to allow that.
What have they provided us so far?
The scope of work and time schedule, they had wanted to start at the beginning of October on the improvements. That's not a problem, but they need to also do the well and septic if they're going to do all those improvements in the scope of work. Basically, they need to do a cost analysis if it's going to really be worth it. You've got a bank in Logan, Utah, you've got the property management company in Georgia, and you've got an attorney here in Troy or Southfield, and left hand's not knowing what right hand's doing, and the city's continuing to move forward in very consistent manner.
I want to squeeze them like a boil. Quit diddling around, let's go.
So, if they
I'm
don't
tired
have
of giving
anything-
extensions, excuses. Lawyers, don't tell me you don't know about this.
Yeah. Okay. And the last update is I received an email from Allison this afternoon requesting a pre-application meeting for that Central Park concept that they had. So the committee that looked at it previous will be reconvened. I've sent a doodle poll out to the committee members for looking at it for 6 p.m. It would be before the Planning Commission meeting, which is October 1st. I think the date that I have in the doodle poll is actually wrong, so when you get it, I will redo that. It's October 1st, 6 p.m., pre-app. The council reps before were Sean, Julie, and Zach, and the planning commission reps were Tom Phillips and Ellison Heatley. And because they were the ones that looked at it the first time, for consistency, they should be the ones that look at it again instead of it rotating out like we normally do.
So we've already had one pre-app?
We had one pre-app back in, I want to say it was March.
Michelle, can you refresh my memory on exactly what it was they were trying to do? And what I remember there being unanimous feeling on the part of the the committee reps that was not something that they were interested in. So what's different? Or
I have not seen the plan. It's
Okay.
supposed to be provided by Wednesday. I need to look at it before I actually confirm and set the meeting.
Okay.
But I just wanted to, being that timing is everything, find out if there was at least the availability of the committee. The first proposal that they had was to tear down the two houses on Central across from the Honey House.
Yep.
And to rebuild with townhouses, take down the ISD building and put townhouses in front of fronting onto Monument Park, and then some commercial fronting right onto to Baker Road and Main Street intersection.
Okay.
The layout, the design, the product type, there were multiple issues with
that
that.
helps.
so.
Thank you.
That's it for my update, unless there's something else.
Just the 3045 Broad Street Committee, is that meeting still on?
That meeting is on the 26th, that's this Wednesday. It will be meeting in the library. I had contacted Sean LaFear before I went to the planning conference requesting the pro forma. I wanted to get it out to the committee. Mark Johnson had been ill, and so it hadn't been finalized. I've reached out to Sean again today. Have not yet heard from him. He must be busy because his voicemail is full, and I couldn't even leave a message. So I sent him an email. I'll keep pushing that to try and get it. The object was to have the committee at least have a chance to look at it and start formulating some questions instead of trying to do it right then and there at the meeting. So. All set?
I think so, thank you.
Thank you.
So we're down to the city manager report. Ms. Nichols?
We are looking at doing another newsletter coming up here in October, so articles include things like the wastewater treatment plant project, Paul's requested article on drinking water, a lot of election reminders. One of the topics I think I'm gonna either probably put in my report for next time is what we want to do with leaf pickup season, because we've had this issue where it's extending further and further out because of certain trees that don't lose their leaves until later in the year. So I'm gonna get with the DPW and Dan and try to figure out what it is we want to do so that we know what to tell people if, you know, we have a cutoff date, and then what can they do with them themselves. So that would be something I would like to include in this newsletter so that everybody's aware of it, because that way when we get phone calls, you know, I'm hoping that people will at least be aware that this is what we want you to do with them. Hopefully at the next meeting, Waste Management, Pat Greavy's supposed to come in to talk about potential renewal. He was suggesting that we might want to think about just extending the contract out a few months, like maybe to July, just to give us time to consider their proposal and whether or not we want to bid it. So that's something we'll be considering.
When's their contract up?
February 1st, I think, March 1st, somewhere in there. I think it's March 1st. I think it aligns with the old fiscal year.
Probably, yeah.
I only received 2 items of feedback on the industrial park signage. I sent a letter to the businesses, and so 2 of them did respond. So we'll come up with something to propose kind of based on what I sent them. Because we will need to replace that sign. I guess that's it.
Questions on Courtney's report?
Do you know how many complaints the road commission received about the lighting on roundabouts?
At least 3.
3.
I thought what we put in there was less garish than what those dinosaur heads or what they are.
So it's not necessarily, I mean, we put in less than the requirement, which the road commission has done pretty much consistently at all the roundabouts in Washtenaw. And then we chose to change from the, I forget the term they use.
Cobra.
It's like something with an A. The basic style to the teardrop style.
Autobahn.
Audubon, yeah, to the teardrop style. So that was really where the decision. So DT was looking at doing shields on, like putting shields on some to see if that's the solution. The road commission controls the ones that shield though, and we control the ones at Dan Hoy. So my hope is that we can do something that's the same, we do the same thing to both.
The hard part with this topic is that DTE was supposed to be the judge of this when they did the photometric plan and showed how a certain light style was going to illuminate across a certain area of land. And my question is, who's the judge? What's the objective? What are we trying to accomplish? And who says whether there's enough of a reduction or not if we do whatever we do? Not that I don't want to reduce the light. There's a way to reduce the light that's hitting, a couple of those homes without negatively impacting the safety of the roundabout. I'm fine, but this could easily turn into a subjective.
But you could go through and change them, and it still might not be enough.
That's right.
Those people are used to having nothing there.
Right.
So
The
whatever.
basis of comparison
change.
is tough, so we got to make sure we define what we're trying to accomplish before we go out and do something, so that when we do it, we have a way of agreeing that we're either whatever.
Put up a billboard. Put up a billboard to block them.
What advertising on it?
Big flashing lights.
LED.
Probably eventually.
Other questions for Courtney? None? Okay. I'll move on to my report, try to be succinct. I did put down a list of options in my report. If I missed any that we've been discussing, please let me know. I'm happy to clarify that or do it again. As I walk around a little bit, people ask, what are the options? We haven't had a list in the packet in a while, so I did it here. On the 17th of September, I had a meeting with Dr. Timmis for the schools. I mentioned the last meeting that I was going to do that. We did talk for quite a while, not all about the city or Dexter. Topics like football and kids and career paths come into play a little bit there. But I tried to write about it here, that there's a lot of different perspectives out there, and he hears them just like we do. And we talked a lot about things that they had done that they felt were good for the community, like letting us put the park in right here next door, versus things that, we've done for the community, like helping them pay for the school officer. But it seems like we have trouble moving past the past. We like to, whenever a new topic comes up, it seems like what we talk about is the past things that we either helped each other do or didn't help each other do. In the case, for example, maybe of a rapid flashing beacon or something like that. So I tried to stress to him that I thought on a daily basis, and I hope I'm telling you all this, so if I've said it wrong, I I don't think most of us spend a lot of time on the phone with school board members hearing complaints about A, B, or C. Now, we may see a school board member in the course of our, existence here, going to the store, go to the grocery store, going to the restaurant, or other events, but I told them, I said, I'm not getting complaints about our relationship with the schools. I'm not getting complaints from parents about how things are going. Most people were very happy with how the roundabouts opened up. We heard Sergeant Fox talk about, that project. Most people are very happy with the paving improvements. We talked a little bit about tap fees. I told them that we were trying to be very consistent. He says, well, we didn't budget for that. And I said, well, I'm sorry. Did you ask for help in budgeting for it when you put it together? And he said, no, we just read the ordinance. And I said, well, if you'd called, we would have tried to help you interpret the ordinance as best we could with the information that was there. And I said, but at the end of the day, I said, it's our job to be responsible for the water system, the sanitary system. And he acknowledges that those are two areas, in addition to stormwater and traffic/roads. Those are the items that are under our purview. So nobody yelled at each other. I mean, we were cordial the whole time. I think, they definitely wish that they didn't have to pay. I think that they would like to be treated a little differently. I told them that we were trying to be consistent as a group with the things that were, the rules that we were allowed to apply. And, that was basically it. I mean, we touched on everything from the well that that they helped let us dig on their property, 12 years ago, to the park, to the stormwater, to construction on Dan Hoy. And a lot of it was interesting to hear the different perspectives of those things. I did promise to him that I would make sure that we talked about what we talked about a little bit here, and that to the extent that there was a way for us to help them meet their timelines, we would absolutely try to do that to the extent that we knew there was a timeline to be met. They still have $40-some million in that bond issue to spend. So there's a good chance that something else is going to involve us going forward.
Oh, yeah.
And I told them, I said, don't tell us when your contractor's there that you need something. Come find your staff early, talk through those projects, and they can read them to them. And, let them be the judge of whether they think there's something that we need to interact on, rather than having it be a surprise later. So I tried to encourage the communication to take place. I hope I represented everybody well, but it was a good meeting. Glad it went. We stayed in his office with the door closed for 3 hours. There were some people waiting on the couch when I walked out. I don't know how long they were there waiting. Last thing I wanted to mention.
Excuse me before you go beyond
sure.
When I was at that meeting we had with the community foundation, one of the school board members came to me and asked if there was a possibility that we could have a joint session. Was that ever brought up? That there could be a joint session between the council and the school board?
Yeah, I told them I don't mind having a joint session. I said, but what do you want on that? What would you like on that agenda?
I don't know. They brought it up. I didn't bring it up.
Well, what I don't want to do is just rehash the past. I'm happy to talk about stuff moving forward, but I don't want to get stuck in the past. Like the well's an interesting topic. Okay, we worked hard with them to plan for that fifth well, to locate it on their property, to get the test well dug, to get it permitted through the state, to come up with the agreement. We paid $40,000, $10,000 a year for 4 years, if I remember right, for the right to do that. And now, if you talk to Dr. Timmis about the well, it's just in the way of whatever they would do on that property. So the perspective is that it's not a positive anymore. From our perspective, it's a positive. From theirs, it's a negative. And I said, well, we didn't force it on you. You know, we did.
He wasn't even here.
He wasn't, by you, I mean, and he understood, by you, I mean, the schools, I mean, but when does that feeling leave the room? I mean, the well's there, I mean, are we gonna take the fact that the well's there as a negative every time we sit down and talk about it? I don't wanna have that kind of meeting.
I don't either.
I'm happy to have a meeting to talk about how the next 40,000 or 40 million gets spent and what do we have to do to help them be on time with it. I'd be happy to talk about the new rapid flashing beacon that, Dan, you're coordinating. You had it in your 2-week report. You had a meeting with Brower to talk about. I'm happy to talk about where do we need to have crosswalks that are decorative. I mean, you know, to highlight where kids should cross. You know, we've had a plan for safety in the community too.
I think if they came, if Dennis approaches you or Courtney and says, here's what we'd like to talk about, then I guess that's a good working meeting. But like you said, to talk about tap fees and all this other stuff, I'm not interested in attending a meeting for that, a joint meeting for that, just to rehash things. Nor am I interested in sitting and having to change their opinion about the wells. It's done.
Yeah, you know, we get caught up in some things that are, and I'm trying to be very frank here about this. We get caught up in some things that are not day-to-day issues that the 7-member body is managing. I mean, when they submitted the plan for the I guess you'd call it an addition to Cornerstone, or the new building that's become an addition to Cornerstone, you know, there was a question raised by our review team: would you plant some bushes to screen the parking lot? Very simple request. And Granger, or their team, said, yes, we'll plant some bushes, as I understand it. Okay? So time goes on, nobody is objecting to the fact that Granger said yes. School board is not objecting. We probably don't even know whether we know or we don't know. There's bushes that are going to be planted at some point in time to screen the new parking lot from the roadway, much like they have at Creekside.
The school board.
Well, when the next building came before us, the plans for the laboratory or collaborative study area that's going to be down off of Shield Road, the new property, we asked the same question. We put bushes in front of the parking lot area to screen the parking lot. Well, whereas the first set of questions didn't make it all the way back to Dr. Timmis, the second set did, and he's like, well, wait a minute. Landscaping, that's a zoning requirement. We don't have to follow city zoning. You know, so then we politely explained, well, you said yes over here, your team said yes over here, you're saying no today, you know, don't shoot the messenger. We were just asking the same question that we did before. It's that kind of perspective thing. You know, I'm not out there hearing people argue over bushes. I don't know if you are. If anybody is, raise their hand. Maybe depending on the article it gets written or not, or the fact that we're on TV, now we're all going to talk about bushes. But my point is, there's a, you know, we don't think that we're not trying to get in their way of their progress as a team. This body, our staff, we're just trying to help facilitate things so that they're done in a polite, public way, as consistent with our ordinances as possible. Because there are deviations, there's things that they do that aren't consistent, you know, the signs, and could go over them. But we're trying to represent that as best we can, and those are the kinds of things that I explained or tried to explain, you know, to Dr. Timmis.
Well, I think
as best I could.
I don't think they did look at the bushes. I don't think they look at the money that they could spend on students.
Absolutely.
That's where it all comes about.
Absolutely.
It comes back down.
That's right. That's right.
So, you know, so if I don't have to do it, I'm not going to do it if I'll just put my money in the students. And you know, if you're a school board member, you think the same way.
Well, I don't have any problem. I mean, if they come back and, you know, and say, hey, look, you know, the review letter says you're requesting bushes, you know, we politely don't think we have to follow that requirement. We don't want to follow the requirement.
There's nothing we can do about it.
You know, end of story. Move on. Right. But, you know, I don't want them stewing over there about bushes.
No, they're still about money.
You know,
they're still about bushes.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and to offer a contrarian position, in my daily work, we catch people doing things they're not supposed to do. And perhaps it's a bad metaphor, but there's a process, and sometimes people just have to talk about what's happened. So I could see value of even just getting together and being able to express our concerns will help us, them being able to express theirs. At least they'll have the satisfaction of having it said in public. I would love to have a meeting soon, and I would throw out a couple of potential topics. Housing. I remember Dr. Timmis saying the ability to attract and keep teachers is difficult because they can't afford to live here. Also transportation, both motorized and non-motorized. I know that's been a sticky wicket, both for the bike trail we're supposed to put inside Dan Hoy somewhere, I don't know where, but, and then along Mill Creek. So I'd like to see it happen sooner than later.
When I met with Dr. Timmis also, and housing is one of the things we did talk about, on top of all the other stuff that Sean just mentioned.
Did you take 3 hours?
2.
You're the one living on the couch.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, I had discussed with Dr. Timmis before either one of you had your meetings, and it comes to me, you know, the brief conversation we had, which didn't last 3 hours, lasted about 5 minutes, okay? Was he listed a list of things that he felt that they are paying, that they don't like to pay, okay? And he said, we don't have to do this, some of it. Fact is that this comes down to dollars for them that they think could be better used for students. And that's, you know, or equipment for students, or facilities for students, and that's where it comes down to.
Mr. Smith, how long do you think we heard that stuff?
What's that?
Mr. Smith, how long do you think it was for our meeting? We listened to that stuff. It was another hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. Same kind of thing.
So there is a, let me jump to one more meeting that I attended. I had the Watts Policy meeting last Wednesday, I think it was. And there is a preliminary federal aid program for 2020 through 23 that's been drafted. And we have one project on there in 2021. It's about $350,000 for Baker Road from Grand to Maine to do improvements in that corridor. So I think there might potentially be some discussion over whether we would prefer to have Broad on that list or a portion of Broad on that list. But we can follow up with that once we know more about how the list was put together. But the Federal Aid Committee did meet about a week ago. Anyway, that's the recommendation at this point in time. So I will get this scanned in so you can see what I saw. It's got a list of projects across the county from the Road Commission, Ann Arbor, Saline, into the urban area. I wanted to share that with you. And then, Ray, maybe you can help me one last thing. Relative to the fire board continues to discuss the potential purchase of equipment, or apparatus. We talked at length on Thursday night about the need for 2 engines and a ladder truck. We have preliminary pricing back, or at least pricing scenario that the chief and his team have been working through with the partners at, forgot the name of it, Pierce and PNC. And we're going to try and get some of those scenarios put into more real, take the numbers and put them into more real scenarios, like what happens if we were to make a down payment, what happens if we were to finance over 5 years versus 7, 10, what would be the cost impact per community, that type of thing. So we're hoping to have that available for the next meeting in October, our meeting in October, prior to the next fire board meeting, so I can have
Our meeting?
I want your input. I'd like to get your input on those things, because, you know, the fire board, if they speak and say we're going to pass it, we're basically left to fund it. So I'd rather you have the input prior to any vote that we would take. So some of those scenarios are being developed. As I get them, I'll share them with you. A couple of really good news items also to share. The chief was successful, and chief, if you want to help me with this, was successful in getting a $210,000 approximately grant for air packs and safe breathing apparatus, right?
Yeah, 200, we actually got
Jump
two
in.
grants. One for the SCBA, which we've been trying for a number of years for. The SCBA, 32 new air packs and bottles. That was $218,000 grant. The second one was a staffing analysis grant for $20,000. And that's going to look at the current staffing, look at risk throughout our response area, look at where we need to put our resources, what types of resources we should have, things of that nature. So both of those, we've got a year to work through on them, and hopefully it doesn't take that long. I'm sure the air packs will go pretty quickly. The staffing study, that's just however long the various analysis companies put their stuff together. So with that, the actual 2018 grant opened up today, so we're working on writing for this next year as well. So good stuff going on. It's nice to be able to bring about $240,000 of federal money back into the DAFD response area.
It's well done. Yeah, well done. Thank you for your help with that. Anyway, good things going on. We'll see a first draft of our budget, I think, at the October meeting also. Just, it's hard to believe it, the year's going by, so just cruising right along, but a lot going on at the fire board. So as soon as I have some of that stuff, I'll share it with you, or Ray can if he gets it before I do, or sees it before I do. Does anybody have any other questions for me? I did include a little proclamation in here for Constitution Week. If not, I'll move on to the consent agenda.
I move to approve the two items listed on the consent agenda. Bills and payroll amount of $212,345.56 and the closure of Central Street for Apple Days on October the 6th.
Moved by Fisher, second by Smith. All those in favor of approving the two items on the consent agenda, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have no old business, so we're down to new business. We have two items under new business.
I'd like to make that motion to set a public hearing on October 22nd to consider updates to the water and sewer ordinance.
Motion by Fisher, second by Michelle's with it.
Yep.
Thank you both. Any discussion? Or overview?
Oh, it's obviously been a long time coming on this. It turned into a little bit more of a project. I think we've gotten it in pretty good shape. Like I said, it's been commented on by Mark Jacobs and Elaine from F&B, plus Marie went through and tried to make it the water and sewer ordinance is consistent between each other. So Mike is helping to format it into more like ordinance format so that council can see a clean version, accepting all the changes. So I guess if over the course of the next month before the public hearing, if you have any questions, obviously we can still make changes to it, but what will be basically like posted for the public hearing will be the red line, and then as soon as the sort of cleaner draft is done. Unicode will assign all the numbers, but it'll help to, have an accepted copy so that we can all see it. It's not that long that it's impossible to read, and there's a lot of stuff that's moved, so it's in here twice now. It just makes it look longer. So there's not the big reason to do this was because we needed to incorporate the results of the mall study into the sewer ordinance. We didn't change too much. Like I said, we were just trying to standardize it to sort of current practice and to each other, because the water and sewer billing sections were just different and they didn't need to be. The other things are us supplying meters up to and including an inch. Everyone always pays for a second meter. And then the section on the industrial user capital recovery charge, which was brought up by the NUMCO situation, that allows us to basically lease capacity if a business needs that in the future, based on the strength of their waste stream, not just their REU calculation. So those things would be in there. Northern United is still well below any permit limit on anything except for phosphorus, and even that is not as bad. So they're well within their permit limit, so this won't have an immediate impact on them, and they're aware that if they need capacity in the future, they would pay for it through this method. So if you're reading through it, like I said, to disregard formatting and numbering, and then there's some like references to other sections, all that still needs to kind of be fleshed out, but.
Okay. So comments at this time?
I will offer that it's not sexy work, but it's important, and it's good to get them to play well together.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna send it back to the DEQ one more time. She saw it in a draft a while ago, so I think I'll use the time between now and the public hearing to send that back. Like I said, the DEQ was really more concerned with the sewer changes for the mall, which haven't changed since the original draft. So not so much our operational stuff. I think the ordinance had been added onto a lot, and that was why it got sort of confused. So as the regulations or bonds, some bonds required, revenue bonds required certain language, or the DEQ required certain language when we were doing SRF, and so as the more it gets added onto, then it's not looked at comprehensively, it just gets messy, so.
Okay, so we'll see this in 2 meetings then?
Yeah, the second meeting in
Third.
October, yeah, gives us a chance to publish it and clean it up.
Okay, so motion by Fisher, second by Michelle to set the public hearing for October 22nd. Further council comments? Please call the vote.
Smith?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Tell?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. New business item L2, discussion of youth board members. So Courtney, you took, or Dustin, you took I'll let you guys lead what you did.
Sure. So just based on the conversation at last meeting, staff went ahead and took the City of New Richmond's kind of informational one-pager and inserted what could be the City of Dexter's information. And so I guess we're just looking to get feedback on whether or not what's provided is close to what you guys are looking at or looking for.
Ms. Fisher?
Yeah. Did we find any communities in Michigan that, around us, that we could contact and talk to them about this? Or is that just not?
So I know the City of Troy does have a student representative sit on certain boards or committees. There are communities around.
Okay.
And the school board does it, right?
Yeah.
Here.
That's the school board, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay.
I realize this is just done. I think where I was going with this is now that we have something that's a working thing, I think we should share it back with the committees we were thinking of that had the questions about what was our purpose, why were we doing it. This sort of answers those things, or I think it does.
Well, and I guess
to a large extent.
that's my question for you, is doesn't.
I think it does. But I think that I'd be interested if the boards are still concerned about having those. I can't remember which comments came with which board. There were some that were worried about why and should they versus some that were accepting of them a little better. We can start slowly.
I think most of them had just process questions, how it would work and how to be selected and those sorts of things. So.
Right.
And the ACH was also concerned about staff time. How does it fit in? Who does the advising or the guidance part of it? Is that staff that does that, or where does that piece come in?
Well, I mean, based on if we are treating them as we would any other member of a board or committee, adding them into our process of, distributing the packets, getting the information out, that would be relatively minimal.
Okay.
It would just be attaching their email address to the committee list and sending the information
And
out
you would
there.
do the attendance piece of it?
The attendance piece I would leave up to council or the board or committee to decide.
Who does that?
Because the question is a student representative not showing up for 2 or 3 meetings in a row, which actually is one of the questions in the form, is one of those representatives not showing up for several meetings in a row an issue versus a regular board or committee member not showing up for several meetings in a row.
Which happened
Yeah, it does,
okay,
in our current committees.
in our current.
Yep. I would probably not even have that line in there. But I don't think we have it on all the other.
I did notice that Troy just does 10 through 12. I'd like to recommend that's what we do here, because freshmen have their hands full starting high school, freshman year of high school.
What about the city of Dexter versus Dexter school district boundary issue?
Well, what I'd say is generally people in their minds define the Dexter community as a school district, so I would be open to the school district, but preference to Dexter City. So if we got a bunch of kids, we'd look at the Dexter City kids first. And you guys got paid to figure out how to turn that into words. I would also say of the bolded parentheses text that I think we ought to work to have them on all 3 of those groups. Perhaps not all at the same time. Start with whatever is determined to be the easiest to start integrating them into. Under expectations, I think they should be expected to attend in summer. It's part of, we don't shut down over summer. They should be still providing input. And for the meetings, either we omit that or we just make it clear they go with whatever the rules of that committee or commission is.
Because is their term going to be the school year? Or, what's their term?
Yeah, is it June?
It says due through June of the following year, from whenever.
All of our
they're-
other boards and committees have June as a cutoff, except for I think ZBA.
Follows the school.
Right, but it's 4 years instead of 3 or something, but yeah. DDA is 4 years instead of 3. Oh, you mean, yeah, there's a few that are December, but that's pretty rare. It's like border review.
But we can,
Is there any, I didn't think about that, they're going to think about school years. You just have it September till September?
Well, if we want them to participate through the summer, then we probably should extend it to maybe through August, and then if there's a new kid that wants to, because they could be
In
renewed.
August, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
12 months, but starting in September, they seem to be that kind of a
Right.
process where they think, well, okay, well, I'm here and I'm going to be on this, and I'm going to be able to do that. And they should be able to, particular agriculture and heritage can help them in that plan area.
Right. So maybe September through August.
Cleanups for parks and rec, or anything.
We could redo them in September.
My other comment is I don't have any problem with any of this. I think we may get some, we may not get any. We'll figure it out. They'll figure it out.
It doesn't do any good enforcing.
No. But I also think that there's no reason that we can't think that we could also have them here in this body as well. And, it seems like we just, we'll just let them be over here on this side, but we don't want them here in this room. I hope we don't have that attitude. I didn't hear anybody say that, but I would just think that there's another way that we could also include them. Let's practice it this way, try it this way, see how it works, and then go to the future. And if we have a lot of people apply, and some people say, hey, you know what, why can't I go to the school board, but I can't come here? Okay, there may be nobody. I mean, look, we've been here, we were here an hour and a half before we even got to the agenda item, okay? So maybe they don't want to hang around and do stupid things like this, but maybe they will. We'll figure it out.
And I would say to that there's a term that kept coming up at the planning conference, relentless incrementalism, which sounds horrible, but sometimes you can't eat the whole hoagie. Sometimes you have to eat little bits on the edges, and then you get the whole hoagie done eventually. So I too would like to see eventually we get someone here to help us get that perspective as we discuss matters of importance to the community. But I'm comfortable with us starting it out here for a bit and seeing how it runs.
Often people who enter government serve on those committees and commissions and move
Absolutely.
themselves right on up to, so you might find that as well.
Well, I did.
Yeah, but
I started on the Parks Commission.
I say the kids might feel the same way.
Yep, which is one of the beautiful things I think about Dexter City is the amount of committees we have, sorry staff, but that people get to be involved in their town and have some input and some ownership and all that good stuff.
Well said.
Is there a remuneration possibility or money?
Oh,
When you have dinner, get a little levy, okay?
I know what I'm saying.
the commission's still like, we'd have to have somebody on council for them to eat.
Okay, so we're gonna redraft this a little bit. We'll keep the 3 at the top. School district with preference to the city, 10 to 12, September through August, attend during the summer. Strike the last line of expectations. Is that what I heard generally?
That's fine.
And then we can just take it back to the committee.
Yep, that'd be great.
And pizzas for whichever committee says yes first.
Thank you for pulling that together.
And then we'll take that version and show it to the committees and get their take on it.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're down to council comments. I'll start with Mr. Cousins if he's ready, Zoom.
And you see, well, it was a one-year comment, it was a wonderful cycle on the river. It was amazing how good it was. Once again, they had over 100 participants that had never ever participated before. That was an amazing number. That was a quarter of them almost. So that's pretty amazing how many people had never been there before this year.
How much money is that raised?
100 times 450 people, okay?
Okay.
Minus whatever cost we have to pay for it. That's our biggest fundraiser of the year. It's more than just the fund dollar figure, it's with the PR that we have there and everything.
I always flip through the pictures.
It's amazing how many volunteers, Sean said, there's a lot of volunteers that make this happen. To get the food there, pick it up, to bring it there, have everything done, and all the people that do all the running around and make sure the cables are
stocked.
It's if you've never been there, it's quite a spot. A lot of fun there.
It's well done every year.
Thank you.
Mr. Tell.
I read in the Ann Arbor News where Ford and Belleville Lake were showing increased amounts of PFAs. I'm just wondering if that's going to intertwine with the federal or state lawsuit we got with that 10-year one going on. Are they going to try to add that into there?
No, that's pretty specific to phosphorus limits.
Okay, but I see the possibility of another lawsuit being added onto that.
I'm not sure. I mean,
Because we're discharging into everybody.
yeah, it would be more the limits and how low they're going to make the limits and whether they're possible to meet. But I think at this point, everyone's...
I think I read today they were finding unbelievable limits up by Tri-Bar and wherever that is.
So one of the things with the phosphorus is there's debate about what level of phosphorus point source producers are putting in, and is that really the cause of the algae blooms? There's a lot of debate. That's where the...
Right, I'm just afraid that another lawsuit's gonna be...
I don't think there's as much of a debate about the danger to the PFAS and the environment as there was for the phosphorus.
I really enjoyed eating that foam.
Right, somebody made a comment about suds on the river and how then they had the whole thing about the foam and like was that connected? It's like totally different types of suds, but
I haven't heard that one yet. That's
yeah,
I'll tell that.
That's in the paper. Don't eat the foam or the yellow snow.
But I think it's a little bit different because everybody is kind of in it. There was more of a debate about whether the phosphorus is really having an
I just
impact.
see a connection to where that's coming down the river and they did the phosphate, this is coming down the river.
Yeah.
Am I gonna get dragged into this because we will allow a certain amount even though under this and that.
It's really gonna depend on where they end up, if the EPA ends up changing that lifetime health advisory number or the drinking water advisory numbers. I mean, that's where, right now, we're under all of those, but if they change them, you know, it's just so new.
I just
but-
see opportunity for environmental lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's trying to get rid of it. That's like why I said.
They're just trying to save your life.
Yeah, if we don't, that's why we wanted to.
Leads me to
No.
death.
But for example, since they're under the limit, we don't have any legal way of enforcing them to be less than the numbers that are shown.
Correct.
Right? I mean, the
But that's why-
health metals or our fire department or
Right.
the other.
That's
one.
why we warn them that, you know, they have to, you know, especially with, if it's a little bit high and they change the limit, then we will have cause to go back on them, but
Well, the
for now,
fact
we
that they're
don't.
even checking Belleville and Ford Lake means they're working their way back. So-
Yeah, well, they've definitely been testing the Huron extensively
Oh, yeah.
because that's how the do not eat the fish advisory
Right,
got
right.
set.
But I've never seen anything, I've seen it go as far as Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, I've never seen them make mention of Ford Lake or Belleville Lake. So this is new.
It's everywhere now.
Ms. Fisher?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Carol?
Nothing today.
Mr. Smith? Ms. Knight?
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Michels?
All right, CapDart will have a meeting Wednesday at 7. We're going to have some folks from Consumers Power out to talk about what they do. We don't have Consumers Power, but it still is interesting. If you want to go, let me know, or just show up to the Lima Township Wave/Kaka offices on Jackson.
The what?
The Deuce.
Oh.
Yeah. Wednesday at 7. As I said earlier, I would really like to have a meeting with the school board with whatever topics we think are of interest for both of us, sooner rather than later, October, November, before we get into the holiday season. I do have concern about the tax abatement stuff we've been doing. I've been voting for them because they meet our standards, but I would like, if it's possible, sometime to have the discussion about we incorporate, you know, if you read the preamble, it's about creating jobs for Dexter City. And I suspect most of the folks who work out there aren't able to live in the city. So I don't know if that's something we can incorporate as a criteria in the future. I'd be interested in that, or I also don't suspect that the $1,000 a year is a make or break for companies, whether or not they're going to be here. You look at the taxes between Dexter and California, and there's no competition. We're easier to do. And in my mind, I also think that's an extra $1,700 that we're not able to invest or do something for the community, or that regular residents have to pay. Let's see. Potential topic for the newsletter would be to talk about parking. I know that Mr. Auerbach's been here for a while, and we had kind of a game plan on how we're going to let residents know. Remember where it says no parking overnight, we're actually going to start enforcing that in 2 hours. So that might be something, especially with snow coming up soon. And I am good with that, thank you.
Thank you. We are back around to non-arranged participation. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Staff or otherwise? Okay, we do have a closed session listed on the bottom of the agenda. Get a motion, we can go in if we want to do that. Otherwise, I need the room to be cleared, please.
I'll make the motion to go into closed session, discuss potential purchase of property in accordance with MCL 15.268, Section 8, and include non-council members Carol Jones, Courtney Nichols, Justin Breyer, Michelle Amiel.
But Dan.
And
Dan
yes,
doesn't need to be here.
if he wants to, but
I got some make trade me, you want to trade me places?
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Fisher. What time?
How are you, man? That discussion, that article that they wrote about
Cousins?
Yes.
Knight?
Softball player.
Tell?
Yes.
Fisher?